Wow. Well, a lot of interns have really changed how I look at if they should be paid or not. And so I'll open up with that and then I'll go into my experiences. Do I think they should be paid? Yes. Do I think it needs to be compensation in terms of cash, payroll? No.
We're so very fortunate to have three phenomenal partners of the podcast. Feit, Rock Daisy, and Output are all companies that I've worked with for many years and fully endorse. Make sure that you support them when you can, or let them know when you see them how much you appreciate them being part of this podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the CEO Strength Coach podcast. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and super excited about this episode. I've got Adam Feit. Adam's up in Springfield College. He's got about 1 million other things going on up there as well. And Scott Caulfield up at Norwich University. Two good long buddies of mine, known each other for a long time. We've spoken at 1 million clinics together, talked 1 million times. Just two guys that I really hold in high regard in this industry. And the topic, I wanted to come out the gate strong with the roundtable discussion here with whether that intern should be paid, just kind of the overall internship experience. Obviously as it's getting older, we're all getting up there in age in this profession. Like it's changed quite a bit, but I want to take you back, just really quickly, kind of Reader's Digest version of talk a little bit about the internship experiences that you had and talk, what was good about it and what was bad about it. Adam, go ahead and jump it. We'll start with you.
Wow. Well, a lot of interns have really changed how I look at if they should be paid or not. And so I'll open up with that and then I'll go into my experiences. Do I think they should be paid? Yes. Do I think it needs to be compensation in terms of cash, payroll? No. Now, if you have opportunities to do that, I recommend it and I can kind of talk about some of my strategies there. But really, as you talked about, Coach Mac, the evolution of what it was like. So extensive amount of intern experience, and I was very fortunate to go to Springfield for my undergrad, which required it. So my first intern experience was with the late and great Jerry Martin at University of Connecticut, unpaid, 100 hours, battling that between classes and spring ball and whatnot, going down 2 nights a week and really doing what I could, the best I could. So great experience there. A lot of the staff has still been retained. Coach Mo Butler is there. She was actually a graduate assistant at the time and is now overseeing the entire program. So really great experience, but again, limited by, and I think this goes into the original question, should they be paid? I mean, what type of value are they offering to your program? I was there minimally throughout the week, about 10, 15 hours a week. So I can understand why. Next internship, summer of 2007, I went out to the U.S. Olympic Training Center out in Chula Vista, which is right outside of San Diego. Paid internship, amazing. Got to live in the dorms with the other Olympic level athletes. Now, I was paid, but they also took out room and boards. Incredible experience out there, 600 some odd hours. I turned 21 that summer. I'm out there when I think Anchorman had come out. So, I mean, just it's the idea of living in San Diego and just training and coaching the world's greatest was an incredible opportunity. Came back to Springfield and then spring of 2007, went out to Arizona State and worked with Joe Ken and his staff at the time. Unpaid, my first big time coaching position, nothing more than a couple muscle milk jugs. I remember we got a thing of sneakers, a pair of shorts and 2 t-shirts. But that experience set the trajectory and kind of really how I met all of you, almost 20 years ago. So that was kind of my last internship experience there. And then that obviously led to graduate assistants and restrictive earning positions moving forwards. By the time I was 21, really, I had, 3 solid internship experiences. And that's something we've kind of adapted and molded into our undergraduate and graduate programs here at Springfield.
Yeah, good. So three internship experiences. I want to come back to that. Go ahead, Scott.
I believe it's pronounced San Diego, Adam.
What does it stand for? Can we say that on air?
I don't know. I'm not sure. You'll have to watch the movie. So I'm kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from Adam because my career started a little bit later. I was a terrible college student, so I joined the Navy after my sophomore year of college. And then when I got out 4 years later, I went back to school, finished my degree, and then kind of got started. And so my first 2, and at that time, didn't really know a whole lot about internships, or I hadn't, being up in the great Northeast is a great place to be, but you also tend to be a little more secluded. We're not integrated. I didn't know anyone at Springfield at the time. Wish I had. But so my first real opportunity in, from a strength and conditioning perspective was as a volunteer strength coach for an ABA basketball team that we had in Central Vermont. I also got to be the director of camps for that. So I ran their basketball camps in the summer, and that's how I made some money. But again, during the season, the connector of all this was I was working at a gym in the town that this team was starting at, and we were able to connect them with a gym facility to train at and someone to train them. But it was entirely volunteer. Everything I did with them was gear, shoes, meals, stuff like that. But that being said, I think when I ended up moving down to Hanover, New Hampshire and working at Dartmouth, I started working with the rugby program because I had done rugby previously and was getting paid. But I volunteered with football to get my foot in the door for an entire season. And then after that, they decided to pay me, a stipend after that. So again, I'm kind of where on your side of the fence, Adam, with some of that. Like, I think depending on hours, experience, I do think interns should be paid, but I think there's also kind of levels maybe, and maybe that's levels of experience, and it could be life experience. Obviously now there's a lot more people like me that are coming out of the military and coming potentially off 10, 15, 20-year careers in the military, getting into strength and conditioning now. And that would be a tough, not to swallow if you're 40 years old, and having to do internships starting at the bottom, which many of us will have done and do.
Yeah, I agree with you guys more. I definitely think that the internship experience is beyond just the fiscal piece, but I definitely want to get into that question a little bit deeper as we go. For me, I had two internships. And I'll do this quickly. I had an internship right out of college with the Kansas City Royals, where I loved the guy to death and learned a ton from him. But, Tim Maxey was the strength coach. Basically, he was going and visiting all the players and needed somebody to kind of do conditioning in Kansas City while he was out kind of flying to the different players. And so I met him talked to him. We were both going to be at an NSCA conference. Went to the NSCA conference. He's like, great, show up tomorrow. I'll fax you. This is back in fax days. I'll fax you the workout. And I show up and had no, that's basically here. I'm looking in front of, Johnny Damon and Carlos Beltran and some of these guys that I'm right out of college and don't know nothing about nothing. And I'm running the Royals. And then I had an internship experience with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Mark Asanovich, who ran a very regimented curriculum, poured into us, and all those things. And both of those guys are great mentors of mine. Both of them have stayed in my career the entire time, but two different internship experiences. And so that kind of leads me into the next question here is I think we would all agree that there should be, an exchange of knowledge, an exchange of experience. But what do you think a real internship experience should look like right now?
Scott, you want to start off with this one, or you want me to lead off?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go for it. I think, and maybe we'll be able to talk a little bit about this. It's early, but, an internship curriculum, typically everybody has one that's running some kind of intern program, right? Everybody kind of does their own thing, or Adams has continued on every experience he has. And then I'll reach out to him when I'm here now and starting a new program. Hey, what are you guys doing? So I think a lot of people have similar ones, but like the fact that there's nothing that, is standardized, or at least the jumping off point, would be nice. I think that helps a lot. I think though, the coaching part is the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? It's just like, we know your certification is your driver's license, that we know you have the content knowledge to safely do this. But does that mean you can? No, we know plenty of people that don't drive very well their first year. So I think, it's the hands-on coaching piece that's far more, managing big groups, getting people in order, getting engagement, getting people enthusiastic about something they may not want to be there for, right? I think all those pieces you have to know just like we have to know the stuff for the test and the science behind it. We have to know that, but we've got to be able to coach. And that's where it has to come down. The rubber meets the road.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one, Scott. And I wish we could have Mary Kate on the call, because I remember her doing a research study when we went back to school and looked at the differences in like a fixed, very structured curriculum, right? Your typical, here's your PowerPoint. We're going to meet once a week. We're going to have daily meetings. You're going to write programs, needs analyses, all that. You had a little bit more of like a flexible curriculum, and then you had kind of really no curriculum. And I can't comment on the statistical significance of everything. It's been a few years, but really what it showed was that those structured curriculums aren't as good as the amount of pressure that we put on ourselves to develop. And I'm speaking now really as an academic, because I feel the stress of most of my interns are current or former students. So that's on me as a professor to make sure that they meet those baseline competencies, right? Do they understand the evaluation process? Can they actually write a program and so forth? So by the time they get to me, when the semester's over, during the semester, like you said, Scott, it is about the actual experiential learning process. So that's super important. Now, where I get in a little bit of trouble is when we get outside interns. I've got one right now who wants to be a physical therapist, comes from University of New Hampshire. Very limited program design knowledge, very limited any type of writing types of programs and assessments, but yet everybody else kind of has that deal. So like I try to find the happy medium, and I'm very much more of a flexible type of curriculum. So how we've adapted, and now being in the private sector, especially during the summer where we get a lot of them, is we created a Google site where I've taken all of my lectures and condensed them into micro pieces of information. So 10, 15 minutes, hey, on this topic, etc. Everything's on the website. I'm in the process of kind of recording this. So we'll have guidelines of like, hey, review this type of material. If you have questions, here's a basic assignment and so forth. But the number one thing that they need to get right away is feedback, because I need them to, and Mary Kate talks about this, how can your interns provide value right away? This ties into their motivation of being there. This ties into their motivation of staying there. And this ties into the motivation of us being their mentors, because I don't want to age myself, right? Heading into my 40s in a couple of days. But the last thing I and many of us want to do is, after a grind during the summer, when you're in a facility with no air conditioning, you're on the field, is now after 10, 12 hours of coaching or being there, now let's sit down and do all of this type of stuff, especially if you got a lot of different things going on. So I try to kind of meet them in the middle where like, hey, there's a lot of information. I've got a lot of resources. We're going to have some guided discussions. But let's be honest, we need you to become a better coach. Selfishly, that helps me as your head coach or as director, because now I have somebody else that's competent and capable. But also, this is what you came here for. And I think where a lot of interns get turned off is that when there is no curriculum, or when you're covering shifts for your bosses that are leaving for all the vacations and so forth, they don't understand the value and where it's leading to. I think as an industry, we can do a lot better of that. So I try to kind of blend both domains of being a former college and pro coach, now being an academic, and then a private sector gym owner, is trying to create an experience that's going to be mutual beneficial, because that is why we take interns. We need the help, but also we want to pay it forward and mentor them. But it's a lot. And for any facilities owners and coaches out there that want to start one, just know like it is a lot of work to mentor and work with interns, because it's every year you're starting with somebody new, and it's not at that level where you have a consistent full-time staff where you can come in a little bit later, you can leave a little bit later, because everything is in their hands and you trust them. It's not that case with interns. You're constantly creating and recreating these experiences for them. If you can find a way that meets your demands and the constraints of your facility or staff, go for it. But don't just take interns because you need the help, because that's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the program that you're trying to build.
As we get into the should they be paid or not, I would, what you just said there, it is a lot of work to mentor people. It is a lot of work, and that should be the case. And that is a form of compensation that I'm sure we'll touch on later on. But I mean, I just, in my opinion, if you take on the role of a mentor, that means you're not just taking on the role of a mentor for just that semester. You're taking that role on for the rest of their career, or the rest of your career. I just had, two calls this morning with former interns that I can't even tell you how many years ago they were former, but I was still helping them either try to get a job or some guidance on a particular situation that they're dealing with. And I think that's part of it, and that is time. Time is money in some ways. But I think what an internship experience, I think most people that are running internships right now, and most people that are handling this, they think as long as they're providing that curriculum and they're creating an opportunity, that's what an internship experience should be. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. interns sitting outside of rooms that are just waiting to go in and fill up the Gatorade cooler. I've seen the ones that are taking on teams, maybe that aren't even ready for that. But I think most people are saying, hey, I'm going to teach you what I know, give you this curriculum, give you this opportunity, and it's up to you to make the most of it. And I think there is some level of that where you got to make the most of it. But in my mind, and you guys touched on each of these, but I mean, one, it's experience, and that's practical experience. It's building off of what should have been done in academia, I think, and it's also experience leading a group. I think that could be leading a rack, that could be leading a drill, that could be leading a session, but they need to get experience being in front of people. So that way, in my mind, you're setting them up for what the next stage of their career is, which is being a GA, and they need to be able to lead a team at that point. I think the second thing, and I think the thing that mostly a lot of people forget is the networking piece. Like, part of the reason why they're going to you is that they want to tap into your network, so creating some site visits and creating some opportunities for them to network with people, phone calls, and, coaches coming through and those types of things. Like, that's super important. It needs to be a part of it. I think it's learning the industry and learning how to navigate the industry and knowing what are the missing pieces on your resume, what are the missing pieces in your how to create some differentiation for yourself in a niche of where you can become known for something. It's lines on a resume, and so like things that we would have our interns do is they would go, when I was at South Florida, they would go work training camp with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So not only did they get University of South Florida on the resume, but they got Tampa Bay, Buccaneers training camp on their resume. Technology, you mentioned this. I really love what you just said, Adam, about your lectures and making those bite-sized chunks and being able to deliver it in a different, in a way. A lot of times what's happening is they're working 8 hours with you, then they're going to go work a part-time job somewhere.
Yep.
They have no opportunity to learn anything, and so you got to create that opportunity for them to learn at midnight, at 2:00 in the morning, whenever they have the opportunity. And using technology, I think, was good. And the last thing you said there, I think, was really important as well, that evaluation where you're letting them know what they're doing well. You're letting them know what they need to work on. And one thing that I would get a lot of grief for, still do, is I would meet with our interns throughout, but their final evaluation, I would tell them what I think their best opportunity for success is.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that was, hey, look, you're more built for corporate wellness. You're more built for, personal training. You're more built for high school strength and conditioning. You're more built for pro strength and conditioning. Not always to what they wanted to hear, but I think that that's important for you to help them know where their best path to success is, at least in your eyes. And I think that that's not an easy conversation to have, but it's one that I think is necessary sometimes. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, which is like the overall structure of it. But to me, like you guys did so well, like defining what a good one looks like, I think that's step one, Now, when you get into the compensation piece, I think we all agree that if we had $1 million, we'd pay interns $1 million, we'd pay it. Right. But the reality is that most programs, all the programs that we've been associated with, Adam and I can speak very, candidly about our opportunity at Eastern Michigan and how many we had when we were at Eastern Michigan. No, but you just don't have the resources to give. In lieu of money and in lieu of education, what are some strategies or things that you guys have done to create that compensation for an intern?
Yeah. So I'll take this one because I think it's pretty unique how I've really evolved it from my years in college and now running my own facility. So, having a full-time job as a professor and having really another full-time job as a gym owner, there is a little bit more disposable revenue that I can put back into the industry. So if my interns can get certified, whether it's their CSCS or they take their NSCA CPT, I will comp that, but I'm not going to pay for it outright because I've learned time and time again, right? You take care of it when you're going to take it, you need to retake it, et cetera. You meet me where I'm at, you sign up for it, you pay for it, and then I'll reimburse you right away. And then I will get you clients. And so, we're a big group training atmosphere. We've got college groups, we've got adult groups, but we have gaps in the day, right? Nobody wants to train in the middle of the day in the summer between 12 and 4 because it's a warehouse without AC. But we pull in a lot of personal training opportunities. If you're certified, then we're going to help you write a program, and then I will put you on. I'll pay for your certification, and then I'll give you a 50-50 split right off the bat, because as a business owner, I'm making money while I'm not there, but you're making money at a very good wage that I can help you there. So I look at, I'm going to always pay for their certification if they're in that realm. And most of my young younger students, you have to be 18 to take the CPT. If they're a senior and they can sit for the CSCS, great, let's take care of that. Because again, it is a barrier, but I want you to put some skin in the game. The second piece is really back to the education, but with the networking, as Scott said, being in New England, I mean, there's so many schools, there's so many clinics, right? So, Ron, we were at the Athletes Acceleration, open up the opportunity. Hey, we've got some free tickets. I want you guys to come with me. We have Perform Better coming up in Providence. Who wants to come with me? We have our NSCA state clinics that are always within either on-site or relatively local. So I think that is really a double-edged sword in a good way of saying, hey, we're going to introduce you to the people in my network, but this is going to give you more education and things to look at as well. And so the last piece that I've gotten better at is, the joys of scaling and systemizing. And, Ronnie, this is stuff that you taught me years ago was, how can things keep going on when you're not there? We were just talking about it. I had a week in Virginia for my son's regional soccer tournament, a week in Florida for my son's national tournament, and then I had a week off for a true vacation. I've never been away from training this long in my life, and it killed me. But if my interns are running the show with the adult group or whatnot, like I'm paying them for that because I'm not there to run the group. And so it's a little bit more out of my pocket, but it's also, hey, guys, I appreciate what you're doing. And I know I'm not there again at 5 a.m. in the morning grinding with you, but you're keeping this thing afloat. The least I can do is send you a nice stipend on Venmo and appreciate that. So besides the food and the Dunkin' Donuts and all that type of stuff, like I'm trying to find even more ways to help them advance in their career, but for them to really truly feel valued and appreciated when I can't be there. Because the last thing I want my interns to ever feel is that we're just running the groups because he's not here, right? If you are running the group because I'm not there, I'm going to make sure you're compensated for that, because in a way, that's just kind of how life is. But in the real world, right, you get paid for the work that you do. If I'm there and we're doing the whole thing and we're grinding through, we're back to our normal schedule. But I'm always looking for little pockets of revenue and opportunities for them so that they can make some money.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add to that because Adam does such a good job with the programs that he runs. But, in a small D3 setting with small budget, for me, again, all of our interns are going to have an academic credit that they're getting out of the internship, right? But so it's again, I brought a group of interns last semester down to Adams Mass State Clinic and paid for them to go to that clinic, right? So, if I can throw some kind of value at them like that, we host one, obviously, 2 every year or some every other year in Vermont, New Hampshire. So can I get them involved with that from teaching them about networking and meeting people, and then they get to meet Dr. Feit and all these other people that we're engaging with. So again, it's how much else that I can do on a shoestring budget too, and again, bringing them to those NSCA clinics, especially the one that you did, Adam, at Holy Cross, like all of them had just like blown minds. They were like, this is amazing. Like they got the taste of, a national kind of level event on a smaller scale. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned a couple things there that, of course, things that I've done as well, like the hosting clinics, like that was always something. One thing I would add to that is that could be a moneymaker for you to put back into your internship program.
Heck
Like
yeah.
hosting an event, and then having them work and help set that up, that gives them the experience of running a clinic, and they see the dollars and cents and they understand the more they hustle, the more money comes back to them. And I've done that before. The paid certifications, that's something that, I think if you can add another line to their resume, so CSCS, CSCCA, a random certification. I partnered with, this kind of goes into hosting clinics too, but I would partner with like Meta and guys like that. And I'd be like, hey, look, you guys are looking for a place to run your clinics or your certifications. I'll host it. I have a classroom. I have these things. The only thing that I'm asking is that my interns get to go for free.
Right.
That was always something, again, line item on the resume. But the one thing that I would add to it is, I think the one thing is you got to, it's hard, especially as you rise up in this industry, to remember what it was like to be back in those interns' shoes, and so like food was a big deal. Housing was a big deal. A job was a big deal. And so even though those things are maybe not things that come out of your pocket or in your budget, but if you can help establish those things, if you can find a gym and be like, hey, I can get you a part-time employee that's better than what you're going to get here locally, and guarantee that they're going to do well, and have this carrot over that. Hey, not only are they going to do well for you, but if they don't, then I'm going to hurt them. I can essentially hurt their career, the rest of their career, right? You have those, like helping that out, or, I would find boosters that wanted to help the program that maybe had a summer house or a pool house or something like that, where 3 months out of the year, they let one of our interns live there, for the summer or something like that. They felt like they were contributing back to the program, and they got to talk shop. They got to talk, with the kids, which was fun. But I think also finding those local businesses, if you can go to the local sandwich shop that you always go to and be like, hey, look, can I get a sandwich for these guys once a week? And if you can put enough of those things together to take away their expenses, sometimes compensation isn't about just additional revenue streams. It's also about plugging leaks where you have money going out. If they're paying for rent, that's a leak going out that if you can solve that, that's kind of helps make that a little bit more easier. But
And I'll add to that too, if I can. I think a lot, and my work in psychology, and now being like our mental health faculty rep, I want all intern site coordinators to remember, and like you talked about it, Coach, all of the stressors that our interns are bringing into the facility at 4:35 in the morning, right? I don't have enough money for this. I don't have enough money for that. I have to work as much as I can today, but then I'm going to be bar backing or working. I worked Home Depot third shift in college to pay for my experiences, right? I did all that to save up, but there's a lot of sites that are like, we can't have you work. You got to be fully committed. I'm all about that. But also, if you're the intern that is constantly worried and anxious about how you're going to make ends meet, how much value is that intern actually bringing to your facility, right? We can talk all we want about you got to leave it at the door. When you slap that sign, you're all in, cut out the distractions and noise. But you're thinking about, do I have enough money? And a quick plug for Frank Wintrick. When I was a GA at the Citadel, Frank had done exactly that, had set up a relationship with a shake bar at like a Globo gym in Charleston. And I was making $8.25 an hour making protein shakes in like the bodybuilding capital of the world. If I wasn't going to class or coaching at the Citadel, I was working at the shake bar. So those relationships were built because he started there and saw a need. I got my tuition covered, but I had to cover rent. So gratefully, it was a nice happy medium of like, it wasn't super labor intensive. I was programming behind the desk and whatnot. But I want a lot of the intern site supervisors to think about, you take an intern for the summer. And again, this is a little bit different at the college level, but can you add that line item? Like if you need an intern, is that worth $1,000? Can you get 5 of them? $1,000 out of your gross operating budget? Is that really going to hit a dent? And so I look at my first intern I had at the gym. I was like, what do I need to get you here? He's like, I need housing covered. That's it. And I was like, how much is it to live on campus? He's like, it's $300 a week. I'm like, done. I'll Venmo you every week. Don't worry about housing. That's covered, because now I got a better coach. So when I was building from my garage into a facility, I knew that was one big rock that I took away, that he could be a better coach for me and the kids that mattered most.
Yeah, agreed. Scott, what is it, like, I fear the other side of this equation, where an organization like the NSCA or the CSCCA, or even at the state level or something, is going to come in and say, labor laws, like you can't have these interns come work for you for free. I fear like that takes away the opportunity, despite the resources in some of these places. Because I think all three of us are products of some really good internship experiences that we were able to leverage, throughout our career for the rest of our careers. Like what would you say, Scott, is a way to I don't know, prevent that's the right word. What do you think from an organizational standpoint? You haven't been in the NSCA kind of leadership group. Any thoughts on that?
I think I don't remember much of our discussions revolving around interns being paid. I think, again, goes back to like, are they getting a quality educational experience and coaching experience? So I think that's probably, that initially, or a while ago, that was the main focus. But that being said, when I started at the NSCA, we didn't pay the interns, and then I was able to get that changed, and we did pay the interns. Again, it wasn't much, $1,000 a month, but it was a paid internship, and you were looking for people that could step in and coach right away. So I think that made a big impact on our program. And I know that Adam and I have been working on some stuff with NSCA Foundation with like an internship curriculum or manual that we could provide and say, here's a starting place. Like we were mentioning before, some people don't have anything and some people have great systems, but to give a template for a curriculum. So I think more of it still is the national organizations looking at how they can support the different levels, and in whatever area they need help. A lot of it, the bigger schools obviously might not be funding, but it might be. So I think it's more kind of being engaged. And if need other resources, do you know about things like the NSCA Foundation that has scholarships for coaches, that has assistantship programs? There are other opportunities out there. And I think we're going to see that grow. We're working on, with the foundation right now to shift more focused opportunities for practitioners, for people that are coaching athletes from high school to professional and private sector as well.
I think there's going to be a lot of coaches that are out there that just says, "Hey, the NSCA has to make it so that everybody gets paid." Well, if somebody did that, I think what happens then is there's all these learning opportunities to get lost because a lot of these universities just won't pay the money, And I think we would all agree that we have to actively work with our leadership, just like you did with the NSCA, to say, "Hey, look, we need to try to get these positions paid. It's gonna be a better coach coming in. It's gonna be a better experience. Our kids are going to be served better," all those types of things, and find those. But in lieu of that, some of these other creative ways that you guys have mentioned, I think are great. Adam, you mentioned something earlier, multiple internships. I think you said you did 3. That's something that I'm noticing a lot as well, where a lot of these interns are not able to get a job from their internship experience. There's a point for me where I just feel like you need to get a job. Oh, and then that job is going to help maybe fund the rest of your career and make the opportunities. But like, at what point is it too many internships?
Great question. I think, as Scott said earlier, right, the context of your life stage, I would say that if you're constantly internship hopping and hoping that this next one will work out and they'll bring you on, right? Like, I think the more the better, but I think also in the life stage that you're in, right? And I think this is where we're seeing with the accreditation with CASCI at the NSCA and, the fieldwork stuff that Scott, myself, and a few others and committees are working on is how can we get these internships earlier? Because if we're looking at a true apprenticeship, right, you look at the trades, right, the plumbing, the electricians, for the most part, these are happening earlier in their career, right? They go to tech school, they go to a trade school, they're still learning their craft. So my challenge would be, let's get as many as we can earlier in their development. And I think to add on to that, give them as many experiences as possible in different settings as possible. And from the CASCI perspective, you have to do X amount of hours, but they've got to be in very 2 unique situations. And if you can't do that, how can you create that situation inside your facility, right? I believe that the best coach is the one that can blow multiple whistles or wear many different hats. I brought in my interns this summer strictly early just to work with the adults. 2 days a week, it's just middle-aged men like us. 2 days a week, it's middle-aged women. And the kids don't start for 3 more weeks. But by the end of the day, they have a population sample of adults, of youth, of college kids. We signed a contract with our local college baseball team for the summer. So how many is too many? I think that's also a testament to us as internship site supervisors is, well, where can we place them next? And back to your point, coach, like at the end of the internship, and I've got people that, hey, I think you need an experience here. Or you'd be better off in a private studio, or I think you need another one. I can't put a number on it. Is 5 too many? Is 6 too many? Is 10 too many? But also, I think you got to read between the lines. If they're always getting only internships, quote unquote, then what are we missing? And what's the mentor and the internship site supervisor there? Are they calling that out, or are they just wishing them well and thank them for the opportunity? So I think it's very multifaceted, but a lot of internships, get them in early, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different clients. But yeah, I'd be concerned if I had a younger coach or even an older coach and they've done 5, 6 internships and they still can't land a job. Well, it's just like getting all those job interviews. How come you haven't sealed the deal? Something is a little off key here.
Yeah, I think to me, it's what are you going to get out of that next opportunity? Is there something specifically that is going to add to your resume that you feel like you absolutely need other than just the experience or the network? And the best example I can give of that is if you want to be in the NFL, you pretty much have to be there and stay there until you get your opportunities, and because it's kind of ancestral that way that they're going to hire from within a lot of times, and if you know that, you choose that, then that's what you're doing, but I think there's so many other ways to create that next step. So like in my mind, it goes internship, GA, paid, part-time assistant, paid assistant, maybe benefited assistant, head strength coach, right? That's the typical order. Well, if the next step is the GA, like there's so many different ways to go start grad school somewhere then, and then just volunteer in the weight room and then just get in exchange, say, "Hey coach, if somebody calls me, just tell them, that I was a GA for you. I was going to grad school and I was assisting you. That's what a GA is, So you just define that experience and you keep your steps going. And then, now that you're in, now you can jump on the first paid GA job that they have open up, because you're there already, but you find unique ways to keep moving your career forward, I think is the right thing. And for me, it was always trying to bypass as many steps as I could, as long as I made sure I had the foundational information. So I went, I pretty much went from intern to head strength coach. And,
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that necessarily, but that's, but that's what I did. Last question I have really is the other part of this equation, is the intern themselves. Like, you as an intern have an obligation to get out of the experience what you need to get out of the experience as well. So Scott, what are some things that some interns need to be going into an experience with, feeling like when they walked away, they got help themselves for the rest of their career?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they are looking to improve their ability to coach, whether that's through communication, team building, whatever caveat area you want to say. But like, I hope for me, some of our kids are going to go into the military, but they're also exercise science and doing internships. So sometimes for me, I know that they're not necessarily focused on getting the athletic strength and conditioning piece out of it, although that will translate to their tactical career. But, it's an opportunity again for them to lead, which they've had experience with being in our Corps of Cadets. So it's just more opportunities to be in front of people and get that leadership experience. I think, again, if you're proactive about having goals as an intern too, of what you want to get out of it, and we can chat about that as an intern supervisor, I think that's huge, because I'd like to know, what your 3 main goals of this internship are for you. Like, I know what I need help with, right? Managing big groups, setting up, breaking down, blah, blah. But, that's not necessarily what you're looking to get out of it. So I think that, the communication piece, probably, again, most of them aren't used to being in that setting, having that command of a group and being able to communicate. Can you involve them on any opportunities to be around your sport coaches, right? Coaching conversations that happen, whether that's just in the hallway or, hey, come with me, I got to go stop in here real quick, chat with this coach. And they get to be a fly on the wall for those to see how that stuff kind of goes. So I think that's, the big piece. But I think if you can get them to have some goals written down, obviously, of what they're looking to get out of it, that's going to help everybody.
Anything to add, Adam?
Not much, but 3 things really quickly that come to mind. I think, just like programming, get them to reverse engineer their experience, right? So if it's 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, tell me what type of intern you're going to be at the end of this. And if those are measurable and they're very objective, then we're going to use those periodic reflections of, are we getting closer? What do we have to do better? Right? We're going to throw them in the fire, and I believe in baptism by fire, and I say this often, but we as supervisors control how hot that flame is and for how long they're in there, right? And get them, just like programming, if we're working up to a 1RM or if we're working up to condition, whatever it is, what are the check marks and milestones that we need to hit, and understand everybody's going to be different. I think the second piece too is to get involved in as many different areas of the experience as possible. And this is really more of a challenge for the head coach or the director, because oftentimes you might be in your office and they think, what are you doing? Every time I get an email from a parent, every time there's an experience that the whole staff can learn from, I'm always involving them. How would you get back to this parent? How would we handle this, right? We're writing the next program. Like in our facility, everybody's got a hand in the program, right? Programming is not as fun and as spicy as it was 20 years ago, right? We're recirculating, we're repurposing, but to them, it's their first time. So I think involving them, the budgeting, right? The meetings. Hey, I just got out of a meeting with an athletic director. Here are some things that are coming up. Their advice, take it. You may not acknowledge all of it and go with it, but they need to understand how much we're dealing with too. And it's not just writing programs and coaching programs. And I think the last piece really quick is just, you want to be set up for success, you have to stay on the radar. When you've been coaching as long as we have in this career, we're very grateful to have a coaching tree of our own. But if you complete an internship and I don't hear from you in 3, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever the case may be, and you need my help, I've actually kind of forgotten about you. And the best interns, the best GAs, the best students I work with, we're on text groups, we're on threads, all that stuff, because we're all very fortunately connected. When jobs are coming in, who am I going to recommend? I'm going to recommend the person that's the front of mind. Yeah. And if I haven't heard from you in a long time, then chances are you may have been the best fit. I just forgot what you're up to. Like, you didn't stay in touch. There's only one of us and there's lots of them. I can't touch base with everybody, but I always appreciate the ones that still stay in touch just to keep me updated with their families and their careers. And you hear anything awesome, I'll think of you in the next opportunity. So definitely stay on the radar when you're done.
Yeah, Scott, I thought that was super insightful what you said about you have your 3 goals and sharing that, making sure that you're sharing that in the interview process, and like, is this something that I can get by coming there? I think that is a super insightful thing to say and do on the front end, and then I think, Adam, what you said about staying front of mind, like one of the things I would always tell our interns was your job is to do what we ask you to do here and then to leave your mark in some type of way. Was that a standard operating procedure for something that we did that you created because I didn't have it set up? Like, or is it, like I use the example at Eastern, we had Paul Cipriano, who's at UCLA now, I think. And, we didn't have the money for the Theraguns, and so he had the idea of using car buffers, and we had money for car buffers, and so like that was something that from that point on, every time he left, when he left and went on to the next job, every time we used a car buffer, we thought of Paul, and that stays front of mind, and is there a way that you can do that? Because the thing about it is, it's like when we leave our jobs, we have wives, we have kids, we have businesses, we have responsibility. When you're at age, more than likely you're working and you're thinking about strength and conditioning and you're researching way more than we are at that point. And so bringing ideas to the table constantly, and not getting butt hurt if your idea isn't taken.
Right.
That's the number one thing that I look for in an assistant. I think that's, something where as you guys are in these opportunities and you interns, finding ways to make an impact, I think is huge. But as this has been really, really good, what final advice, like, what advice would you give yourself, 20 years ago now to maybe expedite your career, or maybe what's a pitfall that you kind of hit that you wish you would have sidestepped?
The one thing I say to all the interns that I've had, and it's a quote, and I hope it doesn't sound too hokey, but I say, don't give up what you want most for what you want now. And I think that's such an important piece of the puzzle. My wife has a 14-year-old, and I've said that to him a million times. Like, don't get caught up, right? We've got Instagram, we've got all these flashy things, but if you want to be an NFL strength and conditioning coach, right? That minor league job with the Kansas City Royals is probably not going to benefit you. And so, I really think that quote means so much in so many layers that, you gotta keep your eyes on the prize, and you need mentors that are going to help guide you in those directions. And hopefully we're going to be the ones that say, you know what, I think you are better off in this area of the profession, or this is where you are shining. Like, what do you think about working specifically in this arena? So, that's my biggest one. I'm think back, it would have been cool to do some internships, but the way it worked out with the volunteering opportunities I had were invaluable. And I obviously just think I'm old now, so it's.
What do you got, Adam?
2 quick ones come to mind. Just like finance, you got to diversify. When you're starting out, don't get sucked in trying to be a master of everything, right? We say like jack of all trades and a master of none, but the jack of all trades will always get a job. And so I regret, I was very football oriented. I was a former college football player. That's all I wanted. And it worked out and it brought me to the highest level. But then I needed to diversify and I had to pivot because now I was working with different teams and different sport coaches and so forth. So, work with as many different teams as possible, work with as many different supervisors as possible. Everybody brings their own flavor and ideology and philosophies to programming. It's important to see that. And I think one that doesn't get talked about enough is learn how to lead your peers. When I see our first year students at Springfield go into the graduate assistant role, now you're working with each other. Now you have to actually write programs together because of facility constraints and whatnot, but you're also leading students that are about the same age as you as interns. And we do a lot about leadership development, right? 360 degree. It's easy to lead down. It's very hard to lead across. And for all those interns, I always ask all of them at the beginning of the summer, who's going to be the head intern if they're doing it together. But learn how to have those challenging conversations with each other, because guess what? They're going to be your peers someday. And so don't shy away from those conversations. Don't have your boss step in. Handle it like a professional, but more work on how to lead across. And I think that's going to set them up for more long-term success.
Yeah, that's gold right there. That's great.
Love it.
Two things I would add. I think one is the grass is not always greener. I always say, make the big time where you're at. Do a great job where you're at. Make it so that that's a no-brainer. These different opportunities that are out there, and sometimes staying where you're at is the right move. And just making it better. The second thing I would say is everybody is important. The people that you see on the way up are the same people you see on the way down. It's easy. There's a lot of, we have a stigma in our field of just being a bunch of meatheads that pound our chests and scream at people. And you tend to go across your life that same way a lot of times. But that janitor, that lunch lady, that athlete from a different sport, that coach from a different sport, like everybody matters, and you never know who's going to be able to help you in your career, but also just the type of impact that you can make, in another person's life. And that's what we all signed up for ultimately. You guys have made that impact on me for sure. You guys, even just talking about all the foundation work that you guys are doing with the NSCA and things that you're doing to try to make this field better. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, man, and just appreciate you both.
Right back at you, Coach.
Thank you. Yeah, you were one of the first people I sent my resume to rip it up back in the day. So thanks for that.
I'd love to see a copy of that if you have that in the archives. I think, as a side note, I think that would be really and I save all mine because I teach a class on it at the campus. Yeah. I would love to see a spinoff of strength coaches. Let's see what your resumes look like when you were getting in the field, because I can tell you what, mine was not pretty.
I think I have my first one. Funny story. I gave mine to my college football coach, when I was graduating, thinking that I had this freaking incredible resume, and he just absolutely destroyed it. And that's what kind of started this whole thing. Yeah, it's funny. I'll have to go back and look. I bet I do have it somewhere, to be honest with you.
Man.
Well, guys, I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you too. You too, buddy.